This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Tales From The Crypt podcast.
I love Australia, except I have a big problem with the beaches. The girls all go topless on the beach. In Australia, that's just the way it is. And of course, the guys, you'd love it. But I am American. I'd never done that. I was afraid. Things crossed my mind like, I don't know, they've never been in the sun. They might catch fire.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz. Gil will join us shortly. Our guest in this episode is the comedian Rita Rudner. Now, I'll tell you a personal story about Rita. My dad was a surgeon. His dad was a dermatologist. That I didn't go into medicine, it kind of broke a trend. The truth is, I suck at math. How can anything have just one answer? So medical school was never going to happen. Showbiz was always a mystery to my parents, my dad especially. Hell, it's a mystery to everyone in showbiz, but to my parents, Dee and Gerald, it was an even bigger mystery. Even when I did Tales from the Crypt and my parents visited that set multiple times, when their friends would ask what I did as the producer and one of its writers, they'd shrug and say, he works on it. And then one day we cast Rita Rudner. My dad loved stand-up comedy. He had a gloriously dark sense of humor. He introduced me to the joke. But aside from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how did you enjoy the play? His very favorite stand-up was Rita Rudner. I never asked any of our actors for their autographs. For starters, I'm not a star fucker. They're just actors. But I made an exception for Rita and asked her to sign a picture of her for my dad. Well, it didn't make him appreciate what I did any more than previously. But now, finally, my dad looked at me as if I wasn't a total waste of otherwise useful carbon. My dad kept that signed picture of Rita Rudner on his desk until the day he died. It meant that much to him. I finally got the chance to thank Rita for that. Here's Rita.
No, that's okay. So during the pandemic, we said, you know what, let's just move. And then we just moved and now we live here.
Are you enjoying it down there?
Yeah, what's not to enjoy? The whole world is on fire. And we sometimes get up to 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's the one place this summer that's going to be cool is your house.
I know. I'm not complaining at all. Well, I mean, I am, but not right now.
At the end of the day, I really have just two questions for you, but there's a whole lot of shit I got to get through before I get to the two questions. So
whatever you want to know, if I know it, I'm going to tell you. That's my deal with you.
Indeed. And we appreciate that. We will eventually get to the thing that where our creative association happened on Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. People still ask me about that, and they still watch that show. And I love the picture. I have it up in my wall where I got shot 8 times, and because I wanted to see what that was like in the elevator, and it was really fun.
It was a real joy to work on. That was a lot of fun. It was the first time you worked with Richard Lewis.
You know, I worked with him once before on a movie called The Wrong Guys.
Oh, right.
And then I worked with him in stand-up a lot when we work at the same clubs and stuff. And then I did this with him. And then we got along so well that we wrote a part in a movie for him. And we did a movie called Weekend in the Country with him and Jack Lemmon and Christine Lottie. And so we kept on the working relationship. And he just made me laugh all the time. He was so funny.
We'll talk about A Week in the Country too. Mm. But you started in Florida.
Yes, I was born there, but I left very quickly. I left when I was 15.
Right. Your early life, because really, all right. You ended up in comedy.
Very late. It was my second career.
Indeed, but my philosophy about what it is that we all do, we're all like prisms. They're prisms inside our heads as creators, and life experience hits the prism and refracts out as our creative content. Mm-hmm. and especially where someone who ends up in comedy or sees the world comedically, and whether they become a comedian or not, they're still spewing all, that refracted point of view out. And so the stuff that happened to you up to the time when you were 15, because you became independent at 15 when you moved out and became a dancer. So how does a young person, a young woman, get herself to that place of such fierce independence?
Well, you have to have a mother who died very young and was very sick, and you have to have a crazy father who marries someone who doesn't like you. And she wants to start her own family, and you're kind of in the way. So you very quickly get the idea, maybe I should move out. And
did you have any kind of support around you? People going, hey, yeah, Rita, that could work, and here's why. Hey, here's the path you could take. Here's, step 1, step 2, step 3.
I had always wanted to be a dancer, so it was my fault. And my mother introduced me to dancing when I was 4, ballet, and I was immediately good at it. And I loved dancing. I was in ballet companies when I was 11, 12, 13, all did classical ballet. And then I decided I wanted to be on Broadway. And you can't be on Broadway unless you live in New York. So I said, well, my mother had died. And I said, well, I can just do this high school thing. And I just did it. And I graduated when I was 15. And I looked up and I found a hotel for women. I don't know. I just did. Oh, I'd been there the year before with my best friend who was also in ballet. And I stayed in New York with my friend Charlene and her mother. So I knew how to get around New York because I'd been there for a summer. And while I was there for that summer, that's when my father married this wonderful woman. And I came home and she was in my house. And then I decided, well, let's go to New York. I really liked it there. So I went back to New York and started auditioning. And when people ask me how to do it now, I wouldn't know. But then you bought the newspapers because I knew I'd been there the year before with my mother, my best friend and her mother. You bought Backstage and Showbiz, and you're not union yet. I wasn't equity. So I go to all the open calls, and I got a job, but I was there for 3 or 4 months, and I got a job in the national tour of Zorba with John Raitt and Cheetah Rivera. And I got my equity card. And then from there on, I was on Broadway.
You told the Telegraph that the first ever paid job you did was dancing in Stop the World, I Want to Get Off.
Yes, that was, I skipped school at the end. I told my father because my mother had passed away, and I was already reading all of the auditions in the Miami Herald, and they said, oh, there's an audition at the Deauville Hotel for Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. And I said, Dad, I'm going to go. And I took 3 buses. I was crazy. Who does this?
Yeah. The nature, crazy. But what was it about dancing that just, what did it feel like that's what you had to do?
When you're good at something and people tell you you're good at it and it makes you feel good, you keep doing it. And I wasn't equity, so I got $100 a week. And I told my father to tell them I was in the hospital and just send my homework home. And he did it because he was a little bit crazy, So he said, she's just a woman and she's just going to get married and have children anyway. She doesn't have to go to school. So he really didn't care about school. And he just did that. And then I graduated, and then I started my career on Broadway, and I love Broadway. Now I don't love it. I don't want to do it anymore, but I loved it then.
And Broadway seemed to have taken to you. You got into some terrific shows. You were oh gosh,
Mac and Mabel.
Yes, Mac and Mabel. Promises. You were in the original production of Follies.
I was. I still can't believe it. I can't believe that I was 17, I probably just turned 18, and I was in Follies on Broadway. And it was the show to be in. And I don't know, I look back and I see pictures of myself and I go, well, I did it. How did I do that? And I'm still best friends with this wonderful, wonderful woman that I met in Follies, and we've been best friends all these years. And it was just such a, nobody knew it was going to be the iconic show that it was. And it was just, to work with Michael Bennett and Hal Prince. It was my second job with Hal Prince, because he directed Zorba, on the road in Zorba. And the conductor was the same conductor, Paul Gemignani, who was so you gradually get networked into these things. It's very hard to get into, and then once you're in the fabric, it's still difficult, but it's possible. As
Follies was coming together with this incredible talent, a lot that happens all the time. Incredible talent comes together, and the magic doesn't happen.
It wasn't a commercial success,
but it was.
Money, it just, nobody knew it would the same with Mac and Mabel, not a commercial success, but the public finds it when it's that good, and it sticks around, and it's always, these shows are always going to be recreated,
but then they become iconic.
I know, and
because of the original production and its integrity.
And also Jerry Herman, to me, that was his best score. It was Gower Champion, I think one of the last musicals he directed and choreographed. And it was just all these people coming together, and it was a terrific, and I got to work with Robert Preston and Bernadette Peters. It was unbelievable.
With movies, it's much easier for an audience to discover them years after the fact and go, what, actually, that was a great movie. In theater, because of the live nature of it, that's going to have to happen because of the reputation,
especially then, because there was no internet, and
right.
You couldn't do it. Martin, my husband Martin, he looks around on YouTube sometimes, and he found a party that Jerry Herman threw for the cast of Mac and Mabel at his pool party at the Hollywood Hills, and I don't know how, and I was there, and I don't remember it, but I was so quiet. I was never going to be a comedian. I don't know. And the camera turned to me, and I said, talk to somebody else. I don't know how to do this. And it was just so foreign to me that I would ever become a comedian. It was just, the whole thing is very strange.
All right. Comedian aside, but you've always seen the world the way that you see the world.
I was too scared to talk, though, because I was so young, and I was younger than anyone, and now I'm older than everybody. So I can.
But whether it came out of your mouth or not, wasn't this still percolating inside your head? I mean,
maybe
was this not the conversation you were having with yourself?
I was saying I really like to. There's a new jazz teacher on 104th Street. I got to go see what's happening there. That's all I was thinking. I did like Woody Allen. I always said, I loved those Take the Money and Run, and those first, Woody Allen movies. And I said, I remember, maybe you're right, percolating in there, because when I was very young, I did used to sneak into the Den, which was our only television, and watch Johnny Carson's monologue, and then I would remember jokes that he said, but I couldn't repeat them to my parents because I wasn't supposed to be up watching it. So, but I remember gravitating towards jokes. So maybe that was something.
But jokes from a particular perspective. They weren't, you weren't doing just a string of hit this topic, hit that topic, like some guy working a cocktail lounge.
Well, I noticed that. I remember there was a comedian, I don't know, he was called London Lee, and he would play the character of a very, very rich boy, and growing up in a very rich family. That was kind of his persona. And I remember thinking, well, he has a definite persona, and you can write jokes from a definite persona, because he would write jokes. This was when I was still like a kid in fourth grade, and sneaking up, and he'd say, my family was very wealthy. I lived in a mansion. We had 50 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms. We didn't sleep, but we liked to read a lot. And I thought, well, that's really funny, the way you can, and it's so concise. So I kind of started, when I really started to study comedy, that's when I started, how do you put things together? What are the thoughts? Where's the surprise? How do you get to the surprise? All those things. And it's really fascinating.
How did you get from, oh my God, do not put the camera on me. I do not want to say a word to suddenly I
Well, I got a lot older.
well, but all right. When I grew up in Baltimore. When I moved to New York, one of the things that people told me back in Baltimore is you really ought to do stand-up. And I did not have the cojones for it, not even remotely. It takes such nerve, and I didn't have it. So I've known a lot of stand-ups. God, when I first came to LA, I played a weekly softball game on Sunday afternoons with a whole bunch of stand-ups. And I respected the nerve those guys had. I mean, they're crazy, angry.
What's the
really
worst that happened? Nobody laughs.
Be that as it may. So when to get to the you made it, I did this from being a person who performed regularly, going, I can't do that. You went from being someone who said, get the camera away from me, in essence, to, okay, I'm going to stand up here bare ass naked.
Well,
how did you make that transition?
Well, first of all, I went from the chorus to auditioning for small parts, to getting understudies in Broadway, to getting, I was standby in the magic show for the lead on Broadway. Then I finally got my own part on Broadway in Annie. So I was talking already, but it took me, I said, I'm a late talker. I was 27, but that's when I started really to talk, when I was 27. And I just noticed there weren't many female comedians, but I was too nervous to do it by myself. So there was another person who is my good friend, Richard Walker, who was a wonderful singer in Annie. And he said, let's try to do a double act because I'm scared too and I want to try it. And we got a piano player, and we did songs because I was a singer and he was a singer and I was a dancer. And we'd stop singing and one would tell a joke, and we got it on at Catch a Rising Star at 2 a.m. because you got to, get the number, you wait on the line, you do the thing. And he said, I really hate this and I'm never going to do this again. And I'm sorry to let you down, but that was the worst experience of my life. And I said, well, I kind of liked it. So the next week I did it, and I sat on the thing and I started doing it by myself. I don't know. It was just
what did you like that he hated?
He just couldn't stand the subjectivity of it all, where he had to make it up, and if nobody liked it, they would just tell you right away. That's what I like about stand-up, is when you hit, the audience is the most honest group of people in the world. An audience never gets together and says, that third joke that she's going to say, let's not laugh at that. They just react honestly. And I love the honesty of it, and I love the challenge. And people didn't laugh at me right away, my jokes. They laughed at me between the jokes because I was funny, saying, well, I guess that didn't work, did it? And then people would laugh. And then I tell another joke and I say, well, that wasn't any better, was it? That was just still wretched. And so I said, well, there's something there. You start with honesty and there's something there. And then, I don't know, I found it fascinating. I still find it fascinating. I went in today to my daughter's room, and because she's the one I tell jokes to now. Martin doesn't want to know. And I said, because I'm always trying to figure out a different angle to come in on. And she said that I should try this one that I just tried. So if sometimes she goes, Mom, that's the worst thing you've ever said. And I say, okay, I won't say that one. But I really find, don't you? I just find it fascinating.
I agree with every word you just said.
Yeah, it's really good. And I love that I get to wear what I want to wear. Because, when you're on Broadway, an actress, a singer, you sing the notes, you hold it the way they want you. You put your leg over here, you say the words they're going to hear you, and you wear this. And you put this on your head, and then you stand over. And all of a sudden, with stand-up, I was my own boss. But I wasn't ready to be my own boss till I was like late 20s. And when I started comedy, and a lot of the guys in the comedy clubs were already, like Jerry Seinfeld and Bill Maher, they had gone and started it way earlier. So I was always a little behind in my age thing because I had that whole career first.
I imagine certainly it was also problematic. As you recognize, there weren't a whole lot of women doing stand-up. Being a boys' club, and these are not the nicest boys. Most of them really,
They're always nice to me.
but really and truly, hey, they're very talented people. But when you put them in a room together, a lot of them are very miserable people, and I say that in the nicest way possible, because they couldn't do what they did if they weren't. There has to be something miserable at the core of them.
But that's when you get them together. When like I had really good male friends, and we would just talk and write jokes together, and we had a good time. But whenever there were a group of guys, I was never really involved in that. And so I always I got along with everybody really. I think I did, and that maybe they would say they hated me, but I thought I was having a good time.
Do you suppose that where the male comics you were working with, they didn't feel competitive or as competitive toward you?
Maybe that's really interesting, because I was coming from such a different angle that
they could not compete with you in any way, shape, or form.
And they didn't want to, and they weren't threatened, because I was just doing something so bizarrely different. I was the anti-aggressive comedian.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, and also
you go.
And also Rita was never invited to play softball.
I was.
Excuse me.
Let me tell you what happened. Oh God.
With the comics or for the Broadway show league?
No, the comics. It was Catch a Rising Star against the William Morris Agency. And it was in Central Park. And I love tennis. I still play tennis 3 times a week. And I was a dancer, so I was kind of an athlete anyway. And it's not that I'm not athletic. I just never ever did anything where I had to hit a ball with a stick. So I have a racket. I can do the racket, but it was so scary to me. And there was the pitcher was Lenny Schultz, and we were playing William Morris, and it was my turn up at bat, and I swear to God, he had to put that ball 2 inches from the bat before I would ever even make contact with it. And that was the only time I was ever, and they never let me do it again. And that was the end of my softball career. But I did do it. And I think I wrote a joke while I was doing it about William Morris getting only 10% of the ball when hitting it.
Yeah, always at work.
See, I think I wrote, and they said, well, you wrote a good joke about it, but you can't ever play again. So, but I liked watching them play, and that was the only time I ever dared. I did the softball game. And I was coming at it. I was never going to be competitive because I was so horrible at what I was doing.
And earlier, though, when you were in Broadway, did you ever play for any of the shows on Broadway?
No, I was never somebody who ever knew that even went on.
It's too bad they didn't have a tennis league.
I could have done the tennis league.
There you go.
I've always played tennis.
Have you caught any of Wimbledon so far?
Of course.
Yes, it's been fun to watch. Go Coco.
I love Coco. I love how hard those people work, how dedicated they are. It's just amazing. Again, that's my I'm a tennis. Well, Martin is downstairs because he's English, so he's watching the Euros or whatever that is with the people with the balls in the feet. He's watching that. And I'm upstairs watching the racket people with the tennis balls. So that's kind of our summer, but we enjoy it. So what's not to enjoy? We like it.
You transition into stand-up, and
Annie on Broadway. That was when I started. When I was in it.
Right. So you had a steady job. So it wasn't like because you were in Annie for a year.
Yeah, it was, and I was doing well, and I was doing loads of commercials. And I was, doing, when I wasn't on Broadway, I did loads of summer stock and industrial shows, where you sing. I was doing really well, but there was something that I just didn't, I had done it for 10 years, from like 16 or 11 to 27. And I said, well, this isn't getting any easier, even though it was fine. And again, I needed more independence, and things just happened. Timing. It was just a good time, because that was, that's when cable was going on and people were looking for comedians in the clubs because we were cheap entertainment, and all you needed was a microphone and a brick wall. And it was just the explosive time. I wrote a book about it, a novel called Tickle Pink, where it's semi-autobiographical about a girl going through the comedy clubs in the 80s, but then it goes a little bit wacky where things happen that didn't happen. You have to make things up, otherwise it's going to be a really short story, short book. So it was timing. Timing was good.
You used the word but you said you needed to be independent.
Yeah, I wanted.
Yeah, that's, and again, you hit the ground looking, really seeking your independence. You even before you were independent, you were still independent.
I was still, but I always had, when you're in a show, it's like a family. And since I didn't have a family, I really enjoyed that whole family structure.
Mm-hmm.
There's the parents and the people who tell you what to do and how to do it, and you're all together and you celebrate together. And I loved that until I just wanted to do something where I wasn't dependent on a backer, giving money to somebody, and then me being the right size, and then me being the right age to go with this person. And then I don't know, there's so many things that have to come together before a Broadway show comes together. And I said, all I have to do is think of a joke rather than go through all that. So I said, let's try to figure out jokes.
Far fewer assholes to have to get through to get the idea from your head into the public.
Oh, I know, because people, it's an expensive, as Orson Welles once says, an expensive box of paints. And the more expensive something is, the harder it is to get moving. But because jokes from my head are free and I just tell them into a microphone, it was much easier to get started because I didn't have to depend on the kindness of strangers.
Well said. If someone should write that down, I think it's got potential as a...
Wait a second. Let me get a notebook.
Please, please, please. All right. So you become successful doing stand-up and people begin to notice. You write a script with Martin called Peter's Friends.
Yes. See, this is what happened. Again, it's timing. So Martin I met because he produced comedy shows, and he hired me to do a show called in Edinburgh at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And that's where we met. But we didn't start dating till years later because I was involved with somebody and he was involved with somebody. And then when he asked me to come to Australia, because he moved to Australia and he was putting together more comedy, I was no longer involved and he was no longer involved. So that's what happened there. I said it used to, and I slept with the producer. I said, it used to be a love story. Now it's a lawsuit. But it worked out very well. I've been married for 36 years. And he has, he went to Cambridge in, the famous college thing. And he had all these famous friends. So one of the people he grew up with was M. Thompson. And they were really good friends. And Martin was a comedy writer and wrote for Emma sketches. And they were very, so.
She had a show called Thompson. Did he write for that? That was terrific.
No, that was after.
Okay.
Cambridge, yeah. And then when they all were comedy troupes, and he toured comedy troupes to Australia and everything. So then
that whole group of friends, they became productive together in their professional lives. A lot of them.
They're fantastically successful. It's amazing and we all got them together at the right time. Well, what happened was Emma married Ken Branagh, and they were living with us in Los Angeles because he was doing a movie called Dead Again. And we were all together. We had a great time. And then he said, I need a script because I'm filming a movie and I hate the script that I have. And Martin, who never stops, Martin and I, the minute we got together, we started reading books about screenwriting and writing screenplays and throwing them away and then analyzing screenplays and go. So it's not like we just said, let's try to do this because other people do it. Why can't we do it? So we said, let's just write a movie really quickly. And we wrote a movie and gave it to Ken. He said, I love this movie. And he made it. And it was with all of Martin's friends. So it wasn't really Peter's friends.
Jesus Christ, Gil, why did we never think of that when we were working together back in the day?
We didn't have any friends.
Wait.
We had no friends.
Write this down. What did you just say, Rita? You said let's write a movie really quickly. That's what you said.
This is Betsy.
Hello, Betsy. You did your memoir recently featured Betsy.
Yes, and she's my little latest doggy. You okay, baby? Yeah, she's okay.
Okay.
So so that's what happened, and it was a big success, and we did it with all of Martin's friends. And Martin and I, from there, we became like the hot writers in Hollywood, and we wrote loads of movies.
You were punching up scripts. You got hired really as script doctors.
And and then it becomes very, very frustrating because, as you well know, about a fraction of the scripts that get written get made, and for reasons that aren't always quality. And it's a jumble of egos and money and studios and executives and everything that has to go into it. And Martin and I were doing really, really well because we were writing and selling, and everybody's and I got really frustrated because nothing got made. So that's when Martin decided to write a script and get financing by ourselves, which was The Weekend in the Country, where I just called up people and I said, we've got a script. I love Jack Lemmon. I called up his agent, and then he read the script and he liked it, and he was friends with Christine Lottie. And then so we sent the script to her, and then I knew Richard Lewis, and I sent the script to him, and we found I had a very nice manager at that point who found a company that could finance it, and we kind of, Martin directed it, and it all came together. But it was just because get on the phone. I just get on the phone and I call people. That's what I do, and sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no.
It was a very independent thing to do.
Yeah, well, somebody's got to do it. So I did it.
For someone who claims they have no head for math, still you have a great producer in you.
No, Martin is the producer.
Oh, understood. But to just get things done.
But he says, do this, and then I do it. And he does everything in the back. He's a really good script writer and editor, and he does budgets. We have a new project that is not going forward at the moment. If you want to hear about that, but it's fun and we like it, so we keep trying. And again, I just call people.
I don't know that these days the business is fucked up beyond all recognition. How does anyone do anything anymore?
I know, everybody, because you've got to have the followers, and you've got to be on TikTok. And Molly is a singer-songwriter, and she's in music school now, and she's going back to college in August. She goes to the Frost School of Music, and she's a really good singer-songwriter, and she's involved in all the getting TikToks and trying to catch algorithms, and it's just a whole different thing now. But the good news is, if somebody calls me and wants me to do something and I want to do it, then I do it. And otherwise, I don't do it. Because I don't want to just go, oh, I need to do, because I don't need to do anything anymore if I don't want to, which is a good place to be. And you guys are the same way, I know, because we did it. So if we want to do it, we do it. If we don't want to do it, we don't do it.
I do a lot of different podcasts now. I've got a little company. That's what we do. We're in podcasting.
But you were independent, and that's why podcasts are so popular, because they don't cost anything.
That's right. And anybody can do it. And then you got to find your audience. But if you can create really good content and you're patient and you're willing, and you know how to sell what you're doing, that's an important component.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's something quite democratic about it.
That's the new stand-up, again, because it doesn't cost a lot of money. Anytime you're involved in something that is really expensive, it's going to be hard to get going.
One of the things that we talk about on this podcast occasionally is the fact that it's the Napster effect. Came for everybody at the end of the day. When Napster first, it broke the music business because it was file sharing, which is really just peer to peer, me to you. I don't need a record store, even a record company, because I'm going to share my music files with you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the old days, in the music business, you toured to support your album sales.
Absolutely.
But once the value of the music on recorded music lost all value, suddenly you had to give the music away, and touring and merch and all the online stuff, that suddenly is how you make your money. That peer-to-peer thing, hey, that's Lyft and Uber. That came for taxi drivers. Wow, they really, it came for everybody. Hey, TV, YouTube, anybody can make a TV show now. And I've got I've got a 23-year-old and a 26-year-old, and this is how they watch TV.
I know.
It's the most remarkable thing, but this is the world, and
it's the world we live in. And I try to change as much as I can, but I still love the concept of me standing on stage telling jokes to people and them laughing. I just really like that. Our new project is me and this really wonderful drag queen called Bianca Del Rio. And we become business partners, and I'm very prudish that I am, and he's disgraceful. So we might have to do some podcasting with the two of us doing something together. And that might be something that we would try to get our little project going.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the medium is wonderful for you because, and I think because of the nature of your comedy, the great thing about radio and podcasting is that you literally, it's so intimate because you go inside the audience's head.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of the way TV worked. You know, a great TV show worked because the audience invited the story into their living room. Mm-hmm. every week, and there was such a feeling of familiarity, which was very important to long-term success. And a lot of this is why radio was so successful for so long. Those people lived inside, Fred Allen and Jack Benny.
That's what I used to live. Heads. I used to listen to all those when I was studying comedy. And I used to go to the Lincoln Center Library and listen to all of the Fred Allen radio shows and the Gracie Allen and George Burns radio shows and Steve Allen and all those. And Jack Benny is still funny. Sometimes when Martin and I are driving to Vegas, we still go and listen to old Jack Benny shows on that, whatever Sirius channel that is. And they're still funny. They still work.
A masterclass, really, just in the sheer timing. Jack Benny was amazing to hear the audience.
Jack Benny and Woody Allen were my two people that I always said, if I could be a combination of those two, that would be my ideal comedic persona.
All right. I think we've laid enough groundwork. I can now ask you the two questions that I said I had at the beginning of this conversation. The first, hopefully you'll. How do you feel about The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Have you watched that show?
I watched the first episode a long time ago when it came on, and I know it's really successful and everybody is really talented. But for a comedian to watch somebody who isn't a comedian, but she's really good and she's fabulous, and I'm never somebody, this is my rule. I never, ever say anything bad about anybody ever. I mean, I'm not even thinking it, because it's so hard to do anything in this world. And I admire what they're doing so much, and to create that whole world and the scripts that they do and the situations they get into. They're wonderful, but it's like a doctor watching ER. You go, or a lawyer watching the law show. It's so
I absolutely understood. More particularly, I'm really more focused on it's about a woman.
But it was
navigating that world. Is there anything like that? How fantastical, I guess, how fantastical is that world? Because it doesn't seem like that anything like that world could have happened.
But I never considered myself a woman in the world. I considered myself a comedian in comedy. So, it wasn't the way I approached it at all, saying, I'm different, I'm a woman, and this is going to be, I just approached it differently. So I admire the show. I know she's terrific. I know everybody in it is terrific, but I just wasn't something. I watch things that are unrelated to comedy. I watch a lot of tennis. I watch English murder mysteries, and I watch Dateline, but either the husband or the wife always did it. And I don't know how they get an hour out of it, because the first thing, oh, he did it. But anyway, so that's why it wasn't a form of entertainment for me. But I know
understood. Absolutely.
And the same thing with Hacked or Hacks or whatever that is there.
Sure. Of course, that would make equal sense. Of course.
Yeah.
A great answer. A great answer. I love that answer.
I love Jean Smart. She's one of my favorite actresses ever, and I think she's sensational. Yeah. It just isn't a form of entertainment for me to watch a show about a comedian.
My father was a surgeon, and he could not watch shows about doctors because they were bullshit.
I mean?
They were bullshit. They were such utter bullshit.
I cannot watch this law show. Just stop it.
Yeah. Right. So
I remember Punchline, when I watched Punchline, that movie that, with Tom Hanks and
Sally Field.
Yeah. And one of the scenes, and they went backstage to where the lockers were. And I was watching it with my friend Marjorie, we can't watch this. There's no lockers. There's no lockers in the back of the Improv. We don't have lockers.
There wasn't?
No, we didn't have.
Of course there wasn't. That was the silliest
green room with a dirty couch. That's it. But you don't get lockers. So we just said, can't do this. Even though it's a good movie. What's the second question?
I guess my last question is, how does one be funny in a world as seriously unfunny as this world is getting?
Well, I don't do politics in my show because I don't want to go there and have half of the audience fighting with the other half, because it is a horrific atmosphere. Once you start with that. So I deal with things that are coming at me in life every day, about me not knowing how to navigate through the airport anymore, and going through the smoke detectors or whatever I have to do, and trying to set up a television and buy a new television when they want to ask me a million questions and all I want is a television. And, why do I have to order my Q-tips through Amazon when there used to be a store? So little things that are going on that hit me squarely every day. I talk about that everybody can relate to. I talk about being married for 36 years, raising a child, going through teenage years. She's in college now, how much I miss her, but she's going to be with me the rest of her life when she comes home anyway. So that's good, because I like her in her room. And no, but she's doing really well. But I just, I talk about things that we can all agree on instead of things we can disagree on. Because one of the things comedy can do is bring people together. And the last thing I want to do in my show business life is to have people shouting things and be angry at each other and at me. So I ignore that and I keep going. And there are lots of things that I can write about.
That seems to be the case, that regardless of the madness and the chaos, the world is still filled with all kinds of veins of rich comic stuff to mine.
Absolutely. So so far so good, but it is a fraught world. And sometimes, lately especially, I wake up and I go, did that really happen?
My understanding, sometimes a good apocalypse can be hilarious.
Oh, well, I said, I decided what I'm going to do is I'm not going to just sit back and let it happen. I'm going to sit back and drink Chardonnay and watch Wimbledon.
And on that bombshell, once again, thank you so much for...
Well, thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. It was great to see both of you.
Good to see you after all this time. Wow.
Yay.
Pleasure was ours. And thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
The How Not to Make a Movie podcast is executive produced by me, Alan Katz, by Gil Adler, and by Jason Stein. Our artwork was done by the amazing Jody Webster, and Jason Jody, along with Mando, are all the hosts of the fun and informative Dads from the Crypt podcast. Follow them for what my old pal the Crypt Keeper would have called terrific crypt content.